On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, what should we be looking for from Darko Rajakovic in year 2 as a head coach for the Toronto Raptors? All that and more in a mailbag edition of the podcast. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, August the 21st, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 going on 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, which is of extra importance today, a mailbag day on the podcast, because that is where we pull the questions from. If you want your questions answered on the podcast in the future, please be sure to join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. Free to join. Come be part of our listener family over there. Of course, you can find the show for free on your audio app of choice. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Much appreciated when you support the show on the audio platforms, however you choose to do so. You can also find us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell button. You'll get a push notification every single time the show is about to premiere or go live. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you to FanDuel for bringing you today's show. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we will get started here on a mailbag edition of the podcast. We got lots to dive into. Starter talk, Davion Mitchell talk, Scottie at the Olympics in 2028 talk, and more in a mailbag edition of the show. And here to do it all with us is our pal, Katie Heindl. Katie, what's going on?
Enjoying I blanked on what I was going to say. I want to go to the Olympics in 2028.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Inspired by the last Olympics, though I know the LA Olympics are the most evil of all. They're displacing many people.
Yes. They're
anyway.
Sports.
It might be fun. A continental Olympics. Anyway, I'm great, Sean.
That's awesome. Very happy to have you here as we dig into the mailbag. Again, these are questions from Locked On Raptors listeners who hang out like little freaks in the Discord. We love the little freaks. Let's get to the first question from one of the little freaks. And this little freak is Toby Saw, YYC, who asks, what do you expect from Darko in year 2 in regards to his growth as a coach? We had a similar question from our pal Skip to My Lou as well. What are we looking at here? Year 2, Darko Rajakovic, Katie. Year 1, obviously very tumultuous, a really difficult hand for Darko to be dealt in his first year as an NBA head coach. 4 different iterations of the team over the course of 82 games, health problems, sort of big picture clouds of uncertainty hanging over everything. And through it all, the vibes stayed pretty good, and the offense at least played the way they wanted it to. Did it score the way they wanted it to? No, but that's because Malik Williams was playing by the end of the season. No shade to Malik Williams. But Katie, what are your expectations here for Darko Rajakovic? What are you hoping to see from him in year 2 in sort of his first year with a bit of certainty going in to the season?
Well, certainty for now. But we'll see.
Yeah.
So I think my number one hope is some continuity and stability, because I feel like he probably coached, if not 1.5 seasons and maybe 2 seasons worth of, ups and downs and the tumultuousness that you touched on, which is good because it can it can accelerate, the learning curve of a coach. Granted, he also doesn't have a lot of the personnel that he had when he started his tenure as coach last year. So I also think that last year was a lot of feelers for the front office and him to kind of see how they would work together and see how he would work and how they could best support him. There was also a sense that he had to get certain things right. I think as much as, Masai and Bobby talked a lot about, he's a full support and, we picked the guy with the best credentials and the best energy. I still think there's a lot of, they were very critical, I think, of him and the decisions he was making. And I think he passed all the tests that they wanted him to. So I would love for continuity, stability, because I would love to see him be able to execute, some of the actual coaching strategies that I don't think we got to really see him deploy fully last season, whether, again, as I mentioned before, that was just because of changing personnel. was a huge reason for it. But I also think the IQ of the, athletes he started with perhaps wasn't really up to where he was trying to coach to.
Sure.
And he was coaching a lot of different skill levels across the board. And I do think that granted the team is young, but I do think that has evened out, especially with your starters, even like some of the bench. So I think that's going to be a drastic change, because I also think the roles are a little bit, I know we joke around about like there's like a lot of the same position on this team, but I also think that the roles in general in terms of team leadership and, who should have the ball in their hands the most, etc., is a bit more clear than it was last season. So I think all of those things will flourish if he's got just the same people to work with for a couple months. I mean, I would love the whole season, but like a few months at a time.
Yeah, beggars can't be choosers at this point. So let's start with a couple months and build from there. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this roster probably less talented on the whole than the roster that started the season last year, just in terms of like raw talent of all of the players involved.
Sure,
but
yeah.
It clearly fits better. It clearly, I think, gives Darko a better shot of sort of running out like a sensible game plan night to night. I think, there were so many compromises they had to make last year with the sort of strange fit of the players, with Dennis Schroeder being the starting point guard and being overextended, and like the sort of having to do the offense defense thing where, okay, like these certain lineups might be really good defense, but their offense is going to struggle. The spacing's weird. These lineups might be really offense heavy with no defense. And then oftentimes the lineups that were supposed to be good at defense weren't good at defense because, guys forgot how to play defense or quiet quit or whatever. This just feels like a more sort of steady, stable, sensible, easy to fit together roster for a coach to work with. And I think for me, as far as what I'm hoping to see and what I think should be an expectation for an NBA coach is I want to see like the plan on defense. We did not see that last year, and it wasn't really a situation conducive to seeing a plan on defense. Jakob Poeltl missed 32 games and was not there for long stretches with the new guys they were trying to build something around. There was not really a sort of defensive identity. You kind of go through and I've cited this before, but you look at cleaning the glass, they have little breakdowns of shot location allowed for the opposing team. And usually you can kind of see in those numbers what defenses are trying to do, where they're trying to funnel their shots, what they think is the thing that they want to concede for whatever reason. There was no such thing to discern from the Toronto Raptors shot chart last year on defense. It was just basically, they gave up like a middling amount of shots from everywhere. There was no real plan. There was no sort of way in which they were trying to turn the advantages they have on defense into, a thing that can work for them. And I think a lot of that is just they didn't have the continuity of personnel. And I think having continuity, having the same guys, even if it's not like the most defensively talented roster, if everyone can be on the same page and on the string and kind of working towards a common goal on that end, there has to be an improvement from being the 26th ranked defense last year, 27th, I think maybe by the end. There's got to be at least an uptick there in a small incremental way at the very least. And, hopefully they can kind of lay a defensive foundation this year, the way they did with offense last year, right? They kind of, I think they successfully sort of dictated the terms of this is how we're going to play offense. I'm hoping they could do that again this season, Katie.
Yeah, I also think not having these kind of like Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby shaped question marks first haunting them, like casting such a long shadow in the first half of the season, and then actually having the whole of them, like as in the negative space of them, is going to help too, because that really affected the continuity of that we're talking about when you're really unclear of the team that you're going to wind up with.
Yeah. No doubt. Some defensive integrity. Is that a hard thing to ask for? That's all I want to see. And I will declare Darko Rajakovic the greatest coach ever if we can see just like a plan on that end of the floor. We'll come back on the other side. We will come back on the other side. Boy, oh boy, words. They're hard. We're going to talk about Scottie Barnes in the 2028 Summer Olympics, as previously teased. We've also got some stuff about just how bad or just how good would the Raptors draft pick next season have to be for you to accept a terrible, miserable, no good season like we saw last year. We will examine both of those questions and more coming up as we continue your mailbag episode. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts needed, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back out here with Katie Heindl from Basketball Feelings as we continue to dig into the mailbag questions you lovely little freaks sent over the course of the last 24 hours or so. Let's dive in here. Actually, before we do that, just a reminder, Locked on NBA, your second listen. Go check it out after you're done here. A great show featuring a rotating cast of the local hosts of the Locked on NBA channel. Talking about the national stories from the big picture, 10,000-foot views. And there's not a ton going on right now in the summertime, but there's enough. And the guys over there do a great job of detailing everything and, having big picture preview conversations, the whole 9 yards. So go check it out. Locked on NBA, wherever you get your podcasts. All right. Katie, another mailbag question. Let's get to this one. This one comes from Honey Badger D asking, does Scottie have a realistic shot to make Team USA for the Olympics in 2028? Katie, what say you on this? I think we've seen a lot of sort of hypothetical, guesstimations of what the 2028 roster is going to look like for the States. Things can change, of course. Cooper Flagg, other guys who are going to be in the draft in the next couple of seasons probably will throw their hat in the ring. But what's your sort of impression here of Scottie Barnes' chances of making the team in 2028? I think they're better than maybe the sort of estimations from various websites doing off-season content maybe are giving him a sort of fair shake at.
They're better than zero, but I don't know that they're that high, especially because realistically that high. I mean, because I think something was really renewed. I don't think something had to be renewed. Something had to be renewed in like the American psyche for some reason of basketball fans, that like there was so much doubt around this very good US basketball team. It was very kind of funny as a Canadian and an outsider to watch this like existential spiral happening. But that said, I do think they served, I guess, their higher purpose in renewing interest in playing for USA basketball in the Olympics. So all that said, I think there's going to be more of a clamoring for guys to be on that team, especially because it's on home soil. As I joked about, like off the top in terms of like a continental, but it is so much more meaningful, I think, for athletes to play at an Olympics at home. You're going to saw that really in all the French teams, like both French basketball teams were in gold medal games and just like French athletes across the board. So I think, Chet Holmgren is like a name I've seen floated around. I'm a little bit upset I haven't seen Jared Allen's name in any of those hypotheticals team rosters. But I'll there's such a wealth of talent that Scottie Barnes would really, really have to do something to make himself stand out that I don't actually think we've seen thus far. We've seen it in our market because he is the star of the Toronto Raptors. That doesn't really equal out to like an NBA star or a talent at the caliber of which I think people are going to be trying to get on this roster with. It also comes down to coaching, whether Steve Kerr is going to be the coach, I'm not sure. And like coaching preferences do play a big role in who gets rostered for those teams. So that could help him depending on who the coach is. But I think he's certainly shown growth and he's got a good, like solid runway if that's a goal of his. But we'd really need to see him, I think, improve by like leaps and bounds. Certainly he could be, if we're talking like, I was going to be like, he could be like a Tyrese Halliburton, but Tyrese Halliburton will probably still be on the team and he'll be better. So it's going to be, it's kind of a tough assignment to get, I think.
I think I'm a little more bullish on his chances of making it than you are. I think he's got to improve.
I'm like ready to be proven wrong.
Sure. Yeah. I'm just gonna do it, Katie, because it's August and it's the time for takes that maybe don't get remembered. He's gonna be on the 2028 Olympic team. I think he's gonna be there. I think if Scottie Barnes follows the trajectory that the Toronto Raptors very clearly think he can follow, and obviously these are all ifs and buts and maybes, but I think there's a good chance that he can do it, especially as they've sort of tailored the roster around him to make a little bit more sense. I think the sort of value of a 6'9" multi-positional guy who can handle the ball a little bit, who can play as a big, who can work as a passing sort of connective hub, that's a FIBA-ass player. And I think as he continues to grow into whatever he's going to be, if he does become the sort of best player on a playoff level team, like a top 6 perennial team, which I think is what the Raptors view for him, and I think is doable for him based on what we saw last season with the leap he took. I think that just puts you into the category of being one of the 12 best American players. It might put him in the category of being one of the 12 best players, period.
Wow.
And we know that the top 12 players are not all from the United States, right? And I think with the amount of turnover we're going to see, this is an older roster, obviously. I think there's going to be no Steph Curry, LeBron James. I mean, maybe LeBron plays when
that's
he's 44,
a good, no, that's
knows?
a great point, actually.
Yeah, I think, Kevin Durant's going to be 40 by then. Kevin Durant might play, but, he's going to be 40 by then. I think there's like a very real chance that there's like turnover at the wing spots. Yeah, Cooper Flag is there, sure.
Look, I'm so like, apologies to this young man. I don't want to talk about you yet. You're not
Cooper
even
Flag?
in the NBA.
I agree. Like, he's getting just like penciled into all these teams. He's going to be like in his 3rd year in the league by the time this comes around.
Not put this kind of undue pressure on a teenager.
I agree. I'm with you. Also, I'm seeing Zion Williamson projected to be on the 28 team by a lot of people. I'm sorry, but like, what?
Yeah.
I love Zion
Williamson.
Williamson.
Runway would need to be shortened.
Yeah,
4 years feels like an eternity for Zion.
Totally.
Yeah.
I want nothing but the best for Zion Williamson. Extremely cool player. But if the New Orleans Pelicans are like, yeah, buddy, go play in the offseason, and like, that's just not going to be a thing in 4 years' time. I think that's a wild sort of miscalculation. You've got like Derek Lively II being penciled into these teams. I'm sorry, he's 1 year into his NBA career. He's a nice player, but like, get a grip a little bit. Yeah. But Scottie Barnes is better than Derek Lively right now. Scottie Barnes is better than a lot of these guys who are penciled in.
But Derek Lively really achieved something in his first season.
He did. There's no doubt. But like, it's easy to achieve things next.
I did an interview with him on SB. You can still find it. Here's a plug. He's a sweetheart.
Hell yeah. I think Scottie Barnes is going to be, I think, viewed as one of the better American players in 4 years' time. I feel pretty good about that. Maybe I'm insane. Maybe I'm a homer. Maybe I'm like doing the Sean's too optimistic thing. But I think it's not like being one of the best American players is what it used to be in terms of difficulty. There's not as many who are like in the top upper cream of the crop of the league. And look, Can I get excited about the idea of Scottie Barnes taking Jason Tatum's minutes in the Olympics? Please let me do that. Sounds like the greatest thing to ever happen. I think there's a good shot. I feel pretty good that the sort of course Scottie Barnes is on is going to make him an Olympic worthy player. And again, I think the play style he brings to the table is Olympic friendly as well, which will play into the whole coaching thing and the types of guys these coaches are going to want on their team.
But do you want Scottie Barnes to be on the first American team that loses at home? Because the rest of the world is catching up.
I mean, it doesn't bother me. That's as long as he's not the one like missing all the shots in crunch time or whatever, which he won't be. He's the one setting guys up and setting up Paolo Banchero for the bricks at the important moments of games to truly reveal who the better player of the two is. Scottie's going to be there in 2028. Book it, stamp it. If we're still doing this podcast in 4 years' time, which we will be. What are you kidding? I'm not giving up this. It's going to be there, and you can highlight this clip. And if not, it would happen in August. Never happened. These just go away. It's like cyber dust. We're going to come back on the other side, Katie. We got a few more questions. We got that question about how high would the Raptors pick have to be for you to accept another horrible, miserable, no good season. We got a couple other ones to run through as well. We will do that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our pals over at FanDuel, the #1 sports book in North America. And look, they've got something a little bit different for you. Now, through September the 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Look, I'm not a football fan, but when I was a football fan, I remember how exhausting it was to try to track down games. I don't want to pay for all these out-of-market games and the biggest cable package of all time. No, I just want to be able to easily watch my team play. Obviously, most people who live in Canada are watching teams that are in weird markets. I was a Tennessee Titans fan. This would have made things a whole lot easier. So go check it out right now. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook and get yourself that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Closing things out here with Katie Heindl on your Wednesday mailbag edition of the podcast. I don't know why I'm singing in a sing-songy voice here, but
I like it.
That's what we're doing. It's the summertime. We're going to have a bit of a playful time doing the podcast.
Now he's
All
Irish.
Right. Next question. This comes from Table, one of my favorite names. It's Table with a photo of a table as the AVI. It's great. Bit of a silly hypothetical, but what's the bar for guaranteed top X pick that you'd be willing to stomach a punted season for? Let's say injury hits the team and it's extremely hard to watch, and we see March 2023 basketball all season. That's the level of punting we're talking about here, Katie. How good would that pick have to be? We bring back Cooper Flagg, your favorite guy to heap expectation upon here. He might figure into this. What is the pick that you'd feel comfortable guaranteeing the Toronto Raptors in exchange for a miserable season of hell?
So this hypothetical question is also putting out the window the understanding that it's a lottery.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have such a hard time. I don't. As someone who has an overactive imagination with these questions, I'm always like, I don't.
But that's not within the rules.
Yeah, I know. I've become a true
CBA compliant,
a true narc. Look, I think
Chris
there's
Paul of mailbag questions.
I think there's a pretty good chance anyway. Sorry to bring everybody's hopes immediately down that they wind up here anyway. They wind up in a place where they're gonna get a pick. They're gonna get a decently, I don't know, high pick this season. I don't think the team's gonna be that good. We've talked so much about consistency, and that's the main thing I want to see. String together 2 or 3 wins in a row, wonderful. But I don't think,
and not have pizza parties in response. Just have it be normal.
Have one, but yeah, winning should become the regular thing.
Mm-hmm.
Always celebrate, but it should become regular. So, I guess my expectations. What I'm trying to say is that my expectations are already here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm prepared to watch, not a miserable season, but I'm prepared to watch another learning and growth season.
Mm-hmm.
Also, as I said before, I don't want to pin all my hopes on a teenager, and the draft is a crapshoot. So,
yeah,
I don't.
So you can just say no level of high pick would compel me to watch another season like.
I suppose it's no level of high pick, but it's for my own reasons, and that it's any draft pick, barring no, not even really barring Wembanyama. You're still looking at seasons of what we have now. So that's why I'm kind of draft picks are great, but they're not really going to fix the team immediately.
Yeah. People who listen to this podcast know I'm a draft skeptic myself. Look, the draft is important.
Sorry,
it's valuable. I think it's way less of a science than people seem to make it out to be. A lot of it is random and unpredictable. But I would say in this case, Katie, Cooper Flagg, to defy what you're saying, and I hear everything you're saying, he does seem like an extremely good prospect. And so if you could guarantee me that the Toronto Raptors pick first overall and get Cooper Flagg to add to Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, I could probably grin and bear it. But as we kind of talked about at the top, this is not how it works. There is a lottery. And so, yeah, it would have to be the #1 overall pick. The other thing, too, is this is going to be by all accounts, a draft deep in guys who could hit, right? Not to say they all will, because there's no way all of the top 10 guys in this year's class will obviously hit, but there's a good chance, a better chance than, recent drafts, that the top 10 guys will produce like a lot of star level players or close to stars or valuable long-term contributors, whatever. So for me, if you're not getting Cooper Flagg, I don't care about sort of tanking down to the second pick and hoping that you get a guy there. You get a similar level of likelihood you'll get one at 10. And so, yeah, unless it's Cooper Flagg, unless it's the number one pick you're being guaranteed, I do not want to see another season like last year, because there is atrophy, the organizational atrophy that comes when you're that bad all the time. It just, you can't keep piling up these seasons year after year, lest you become the Detroit Pistons. I'm sorry. I know you love the Detroit Pistons, but come on.
This is their year. This is going to be their year.
Yes, their year to win 26 games. I think that is a pretty good way to put a ball in that question. This one comes here from Matt Shaw asking, if Davion Mitchell can shoot 40% on catch and shoot threes, do you see him starting over Grady, given the aggressive on-ball defense? It does seem like Grady Dick is the leader in the clubhouse to be the starting two guard. You could talk me into Kelly Olynyk starting and kind of playing a bigger lineup. I don't think I want to see that necessarily. You could talk me into perhaps Davion Mitchell. Maybe Ochai Agbaji gets a shot, though after his summer league performance, I don't know if that's going to be a thing they go and try. Where are you at here, Katie, with Davion Mitchell? I have expected him to be sort of a defensive mean guy off the bench who you hope can sort of replicate what he did last year, where he shot 36% from deep. But 40% is a big jump from that for a guy who previously just was like kind of a non-shooter entirely. What is the sort of threshold for Davion Mitchell to be starter level for you on this team, I guess, is the way I'll frame this to you.
I don't think he's actually, I think Grady will start ahead of him, at least to begin the season, just because that's where we've seen Grady positioned. You and I have talked about this. I think this is kind of the natural trajectory of the growth that the front office wants for him and that Darko Rajaković wants for him too. That said, I do see like this is being kind of good pressure coming up behind him, not to be like, if you screw up, we're going to bench you. Yeah. But if, Davion Mitchell, it just like by virtue of being there, puts like a pretty good pressure. And I think, generally defensively, he does seem a bit more capable at this point, just in the size and the way he plays than Grady. And it is a bit more aggressive, but, all that could also change. Grady did look, as we've talked about before, really aggressive and very good in his summer league games and pretty competent. But I kind of like the duality of these two, almost like playing off of each other.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a little bit, you're running the risk of being real small if you roll out a backcourt of Mitchell quickly. Yes. As much as Mitchell can take on the tougher defensive assignments and maybe play up in size a little bit, he's still like 6'1". Like having a 6'1", 6'3" backcourt in the year of our Lord 2024, not something I'm super keen on. I think the other sort of more important layer to this question from Matt is like, if he shoots 40%, on what volume is he doing that, right? He shot 2.2 threes a game last season. That's just like not enough volume to make a defense really care. They're totally going to funnel shots to Davion Mitchell if he's out there with the starters. And if he's not taking them with high volume and he's knocking him in once in a while, but he's not really changing the shape of the floor while he's doing it, then I don't think the return of having him be in the starting lineup will be enough. If he can come out and shoot 40% on like 4.5 attempts a game, great. That feels entirely unrealistic to ask of a guy who has never shot better than 36%. And he shot 4.3 attempts as a rookie back in 21-22, but shot just 31.6% on those. So I think the volume is the more important question here than even the accuracy. And I just don't see a world in which he's potent enough as a 3-point shooter to really warrant being a starter for this team. But we'll see. Maybe the defense is really, really, really bad with Grady Dick in at the 2 and they have to reassess things. Last question here. This comes from Duncan. I really like this question. Which former Raptor firing would you like to have been a fly on the wall for? Katie, I think there have been some explosive Raptors firings over the years. Who you got here?
Nick Nurse.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Explain, because I feel like maybe I know how that conversation went, but
I know how
maybe
it.
I'm
I
dumb.
kind of
Yeah.
know how it went, but I still
Mhm.
would like to the nuances and maybe reactions, facial reactions.
Sure. Does Masai
Um,
like rip his book in half or something? Like,
yeah. Does the Nick Nurse hat like come off and get thrown on the floor? Is it purely amicable, but with a lot of like
hmm
underlying like strain,
hmm
simmering,
hmm
tension? Um, is it a phone call? Is it a text? Like, honestly, it might have been a text. I don't think it was, but
Yeah,
I
we
could
know
see
that it's
it.
like a sort of a mutual thing where they both know it's over after the chilly
Yeah,
comments a couple weeks before the end of the
just like
season.
he's just waiting to receive the text or to get the call. So it could have
What
been
if they
very
just ghosted
short.
each other and just
Maybe.
assumed, hey, it's done, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
So I think for the nuances around that conversation, however it happened.
Mhm. I like that. I think the chalk answer is probably Dwayne Casey after the 2018 playoffs and the loss to LeBron,
Yeah.
and all of that. I think that, probably a less of a sort of fun conversation, more just you're in there as the fly in the wall for a screaming match, because it seems like that's kind of how Masai was feeling about that whole thing. Obviously, Dwayne Casey, an absolute saint, a beautiful man, and it's a shame things ended the way they did with him. That's not my
Mhm.
answer, though. I think I'm going to go with Brian Colangelo, because when
That's a
they
good
fired
one
him, they didn't
too.
really fire him. They just said, "Be a consultant for us," yes, and then he left like a week later. But like, to not fully fire the guy when you're actually firing the guy, really want to see how that one was laid out by, I think, Tim Lywicki at the time, who was running the show for MLSC. That feels like a conversation to really want to dig into, because man, the Colangelo thing went so haywire by the end.
I
For them
think
to be like, we feel bad, so it's like, we'll put you upstairs. It'll be
yeah.
fine, right? It'll be normal. It's gonna not be awkward at
You've heard
all.
of soft quitting, soft
Mhm.
firing.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that Casey would be good for like I bet you would get some Prebo Caseyisms
Oh yeah, yeah.
out of that like never really made, or were like ready for the light of day or public
Mhm.
facing
Mhm.
conversation. So that could have been good.
Yeah. Shout out Dwayne Casey.
I know.
What a fellow.
Mhm.
Love the man. Cats don't love him. But
Who knew there were
but
so many ways to
who
skin a cat?
knew there were so many ways? That feels like a perfect way to end the podcast, Katie. With really nasty imagery of Dwayne Casey and his cats. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, I was kind of annoyed with the way people were talking about the Darko Hamby lawsuit against the WNBA and Las Vegas
Mhm.
Aces, and by extension, Becky Hammon, specifically in the way that I think people, one, when it comes to like just like women in general, you always sort of you need a villain. So I heard a lot of like, is Becky
Mm.
Hammon bad? Is she evil? Should she be fired? And I also think there was a lot of gross discussion around Hamby going after what she deserved and what she wanted. So I wrote about all of that.
Mhm.
Little bit of labor law, little bit of
Just some light afternoon reading.
yeah, women bodily politics, little bit of coaching theory. Anyway, that's it. Basketball feelings.
I haven't read it yet, but that feels like essential reading, and I'm going to probably read it when I finish up posting this podcast. Katie, as always, pleasure having you. Thank you to listeners who sent in questions, who rock with the show. You're all very lovely. You're the best, even though we call you little freaks. We do it out of love, okay? We'll be back again on Thursday. Topic, guest, TBD. It's the summer, all right? We're not like getting ahead of things necessarily as often as we, or as well as we normally would, but we'll have something for you on Thursday to round out your week of shows. And coming up next week, we're going to start a series called Best Case, Worst Case, where we go through the core players of the Toronto Raptors and try to outline the best case, worst case, and sort of most likely case for each of them this coming season. So that begins next week. And so, yeah, who says we're not planning ahead? We're just not planning ahead for Thursday. Otherwise, we are loaded up with all kinds of great preseason stuff for you. Thanks for supporting the show. If you haven't yet, subscribe, follow, rate, review. Always tell a friend. It's still the best way to get people to tune into podcasts is just recommendation. Nothing higher than your own recommendation to your pals. So please go do that. You can subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff. We'll talk to you again on Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Oh, my God.